So another really important aspect to mention is what to do when clients don't feel any emotion, or if you yourself don't have any particular emotion about something that you'd like to tap on. So for example, if you have a memory or there's an experience that happened to you and it's simply a memory and no physical emotion arises in the body when you have that memory, that's okay. There's another technique that we can use so that you can still tap on that issue. And that technique is called VOC, or validity of cognition. What you'll find is that if you ask some clients to rate their emotion on a scale of 1 to 10, but they don't feel any particular emotion as you go into that topic, they'll probably say, well, I don't feel anything. I can't give you a number on a scale of 1 to 10. Or you might find that for yourself as well. As you remember an event, there's nothing that really comes up for you. So instead of measuring the particular emotion or the disruption of energy that you might feel on a scale of 1 to 10, what we would measure instead is how valid is that thought for you? How true does that feel for you? Something else you can mention is maybe how real does that situation feel for you? How much are you involved in that scenario? How much are you involved in part of that memory as you go back to that memory? And on a scale of 1 to 10, scale that. How involved are you? How true does it feel for you if you make a statement? How true does that thought feel for you? And sometimes we can use that instead of using the actual emotion. I'll give you an example. If a client said they really believe that they don't deserve to do any better because they haven't worked hard enough, for example, and you ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how true is that for you? And they'd probably reply, well, that's really true. I didn't work hard, so I don't deserve any more. And that might be a 9 or a 10 on the scale for them. And there's no particular emotion attached to it. It's just that thought, that cognition feels true for them. So have them stay in that place and have them start with a karate chop point or the sore spot and say, even though it feels really true for me that I don't deserve any better because I didn't work hard enough, I can love and accept myself anyway, fully and completely, and maybe be open to letting go of that thought and that belief. And then you would tap this thought, I don't deserve any better, this thought, I don't deserve any better, this thought, I don't deserve any better, and move down as many points as you need to. And then check back in with the client. How true on a scale of 1 to 10 does that thought feel for you as you say out loud, I don't deserve any better, I didn't work hard enough. And what you'll find is the number will decrease with different rounds of tapping, gamut point if you need it, and stay with that if that's what the client is at, because some people unfortunately are a bit disconnected from emotions. You might find after peeling away a few layers that are just thought oriented or cognition oriented, that instead the emotion will arise after that. And if it does come up, if emotion does come up, then go back to scaling the emotion instead of just scaling the thought. You might also find for clients who have a traumatic memory that they can remember it, but there's no emotion attached to it. And that's okay. You can just have them ask them, how involved do you feel in that memory? How true does that memory feel for you? And how big of a part of that were you? And on a scale of 1 to 10, scale that. Have them tap on the memory and then go back to see if they still feel the same level of involvement. And again, especially with traumatic memories, you might find that as you tap away a few of those layers, that's when it gives the space and permission for the emotion to come up, which is a beautiful place and an opportunity to heal as long as we view it from that place. So that's what you can use, validity of cognition, or VOC. If clients don't have any particular emotion about something, you can still help them shift and help them grow and change that way. And now for my favorite section, which is useful questions that you can ask yourself or your client to find the real root of the problem. So as much as EFT will work for surface issues like feeling anxious about being late for work or feeling frustration with something in your life, it's actually used to its best potential, highest potential, when we really get to the root of the problem. So if there's something that's continually in your life or your client's life, you can tap on that surface issue, but if you can help them identify what's really underneath that and where it stems from, you can kind of pull the weed out from the root instead of just chopping off the top of the weed over and over again with EFT. And the quicker you can find the root, the quicker you can provide freedom from any negative emotion for yourself or for your client. So for me personally, the favorite question I like to ask my clients is, what's your earliest memory of this same feeling? So if they come to me with guilt, if they come to me with anger, if they come to me with extreme sadness, if they come to me with frustration, and it seems to be something that seeps into all areas of their life, I'll ask them, what's your earliest memory of this same feeling? And let the subconscious mind come up with the answer. If they can get the conscious mind out of the way, the thinking, analytical mind, and they're in a relaxed state, it's usually after a couple of rounds of tapping. Sometimes I won't ask that question until about halfway through a session. That doesn't mean that you have to do it that way. But when a client's in a relaxed state after a few rounds of tapping, like that non-directive approach we talked about, usually the subconscious mind will let you know what the root of the problem is, the root of the issue is. The other two questions that are my personal favorite are, what is the upside of keeping this behavior? So for clients who have an addiction issue, if there's a weight issue, if there's a depression issue, sometimes there's psychological reversal around those specific issues. So that's one of the best questions to ask. What's the upside of keeping this behavior? And most of them will reply with, well, there's no upside to this behavior, but if you really dance around it and do a little bit of detective work, you'll find that maybe if they gave up the food cravings, or maybe if they gave up the cigarettes, they don't know what they would do. They feel like they would lose their friends. They would have to go buy a whole new wardrobe, and they really feel like they couldn't afford that. So it's important to find that block, because you can tap on that block. And once that block is removed, then the true work and the true healing begins to unfold. The other question I also like to rephrase it a little bit is, what's the downside of letting go of this behavior? And it's sort of the same principle. What would be the worst thing that would happen if you really let this go? And most people, when they really think about it, if they're in a relaxed state, they would say, well, I wouldn't know who I was. I've revolved my life around this problem for so long. It's just part of who I am. And sometimes that means if we let go of a problem, we'd be a completely different person. So sometimes that's why we, as much as we don't like that problem that's in our life, part of us wants to hold on to it because it's almost part of our identity. So what's the upside of keeping the behavior? What's the downside of letting go of the behavior? What's the earliest memory of this same feeling? So those are really three really good questions. Some other questions that you can ask are, what was happening in your life around this time? So if you can ask them, what's your earliest memory, or when did this first start, this feeling, this emotion, this problem? And then ask them, what else was going on in your life at that time? Was there anything else that was happening? Was someone else in your family sick? Was there other stress in your home or with your family? Was there something else with your own personal health? And how were other people reacting to that? Was there an accident? So just ask that kind of general question and find out what was going on. And if there was something else going on in their life at that time, tap on that issue. I like to ask clients what they're most angry about. If there's an event in their life that they wish had never happened, what would that event be? And it's usually the issue that the client wants to avoid the most. If they're really dancing and skirting around something, sometimes that's the issue that we need to tap on first and foremost. That's the primary one, actually, that will help them move past that block. I'll ask them, what's the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to them? If you do not have this problem, what else would you be doing, or what else might happen in your life? And a lot of them would say, well, if I didn't have all these money problems, for example, well, then I could do what I wanted. And then you can ask them, well, what would that feel like? And what part of you, what else comes up for you after that? And it's usually issues of deservingness, for example. We can ask them, how might this problem be serving you? Which is sort of what's the upside of keeping this behavior. Ask them if they're really ready to let go of the problem, because a lot of times they might not actually be ready to let go of the problem. I ask my clients, who do you most blame for this problem? Is there someone else in your life that you blame for this problem? Who is that, and why do you blame them? What are they most afraid of, or who are they most afraid of in their life? And there's a couple of other really good questions. What's their biggest fear, and why is that their biggest fear? And usually it's a fear of success or a fear of failure. And then you ask, okay, what's your earliest memory of that same feeling? Go back and tap on that issue in order to help move forward. Ask them, what is it that you want the most in your life? What is it that you really desire to have in your life? And most people would say perfect health or a perfect relationship or more money. And then ask them, why don't you have that? Listen to the excuses that arise or the belief system that arises, because their belief system is very true for them. And as a therapist, we honor and respect that, because that's really where they're coming from. And we're not there to say that that's not true. We're there to honor and respect. Well, what is it that you want in your life? Why don't you have that? And you'll probably get a reason why they don't think it's possible for them to have that, which is perfectly fine. Tap on that reason why they think they don't deserve it. It's not possible for me. It's never going to be that way. Who told you that? What's your earliest memory of someone telling you that or installing that belief system in you? So we can help slowly shift belief systems about what we think is possible for us or for our client using emotional freedom technique, which is a little more similar to the VOC, the validity of cognition, because as someone states their belief, it just feels true for them. There might not be any negative emotion attached to it, like resentment or anger or sadness or guilt. It's just a belief system. It just feels true for them. So you can slowly begin to shift that as well using EFT. The other question that can help you really find what's going on with a client is, what is the most reoccurring problem in your life? What problem has been with you for a really long time? And then ask them, when did that problem start? Okay. And then the earlier you can go back, I personally find the earlier that you can go back to when the problem first started and what was going on in their life at that time, the more effective emotional freedom technique is. You can continue to tap on the back pain that they've had and how it feels right now, but going back to when the back pain started, for example, is a really good way to get to the root of the problem. The other question is asking them, what do you dislike the most about yourself? And most people have something that they don't like about themselves, but usually what we resist persists. And we've heard that old saying, right? What you resist the most continues to persist in your life. So whatever problem that you're resisting or whatever you dislike about yourself, and you keep resisting that, it seems like we keep getting more of that. So letting go of that resistance to disliking that part of our lives is, by tapping on it, of course, is actually what helps alleviate that problem, which is the beauty of EFT. So again, there'll be a little bit more demonstration of this in the one-on-one sessions and the group sessions of how to use EFT in the art of unfolding emotional freedom technique to really get to the root of the problem. It takes some time to develop that skill, but it's something that I believe everyone is capable of doing. Another amazing part of EFT is that it works really well over the phone. So as a therapist myself, I do have a number of clients that I do EFT with over the phone, and it does require a few other small skills that you would need as a therapist when you're using EFT. The first thing that I do when I have a phone client, hopefully if they're not in the same time zone, sometimes that's a bit tricky to find a time that works for both of you, depending on how far across the world they are. If you find a time that does work for each of you, the first thing that I would do is send them a copy of the tapping points. If they can't find it on YouTube, for example, then I usually like to send them my own copy via email or via the post of the procedure that I normally use with all of my clients. So all the tapping point, the gamut point procedure, all the basic information. And I ask them if they can and if they have time to review that before we get started. When we use a phone session with a client, something like Skype is also available, and that's really popular. Phone sessions are not for everybody. If you can use Skype, you can use a webcam, and then it's really great because you can still observe the client and their reactions to certain questions. Body language is actually really important. 90% of communication, of all communication, is actually nonverbal. So it's not exactly what they're saying, but rather how they're saying it, whether or not their body moves when they're replying to that question. If it does move, are they opening their arms and uncrossing their legs, or are they crossing their arms and crossing their legs, trying to create a barrier between you and them? So you can, that's a whole other aspect of being a therapist, that you can go and study just observing clients' body language. But we don't have that. If you're on Skype, you might be able to see eye contact or lack of eye contact with your client when you ask particular questions, or how their body moves if you have a webcam when you're using Skype. But if you're just over the phone, you have to get really good at, or there's a skill that you will cultivate and develop, and that's listening to how the tone of voice changes for your client. And what I personally find is that you'll get really good at knowing when your client's at an 8 or a 9 or a 10, especially if it's a client that has a lot of anxiety. You'll be able to hear it in their voice when they're higher on that scale, because that's the only tool that you have. So you really get good at listening in and listening to your clients, and their voice might speed up, their voice might slow down, the fluctuation begins to change a little bit, the intonation changes a little bit, you can almost hear a shaky or a nervous voice, and you'll get really good at that as you spend more and more time over the phone with clients. And if you are a therapist and tend to enjoy using just phone sessions with clients, know that it provides you with a potential amount of clients that you would never be able to access if you were just doing clients one-on-one. Of course, if it is available at any time to have a one-on-one session with a client, more particularly for the first session, that's really helpful. Then you can continue sessions over the phone. So I have clients that I've actually never met, and I have other clients that I have most sessions with over the phone, but if they are in town, we will meet instead. So keep that in mind. It can potentially expand your clientele base to be worldwide, which is awesome. The next topic that I'd like to touch on is using EFT for children and or pets. So using EFT for children is personally one of my favorite things, because I think we can help evolve the consciousness of the planet by starting with those who are still forming their consciousness, who are still forming their belief system via what's happening to them every day. So it's really important, because as we begin to notice as adults that we're still carrying around some of these childhood issues, like when we got in trouble from our teacher in grade 2 and felt really embarrassed in class, and now because of that I have a fear of public speaking, we have to go all the way back as an adult to tap on that issue. Well, isn't it amazing if we can use EFT with children and for children, and to teach them the technique if they're old enough to comprehend and understand it, so they don't have to carry those issues with them for a lifetime. So if you're a parent, this is a really great tool. Once you understand the levels and the layers of the technique, you can tap on your child or for your child, and you can make it more of a game. You can do Simon says tap here, Simon says tap here, and then just have them tap with you. If the child's really young, you can tap on them or for them, be observant of their reaction to it. Sometimes they love it, and if they're not enjoying it, then they'll probably let you know. A really good example, you can change the setup phrase. Instead of saying like, even though I had a bad day at school, I love and accept myself fully and completely, you'd probably change the setup statement to, even though I got in trouble with Mrs. Rogers today, I'm still a good kid, and I'm still a good kid. Even though I got in trouble, Mrs. Rogers gave me trouble, Mrs. Rogers gave me trouble, and that didn't feel good. Mrs. Rogers gave me trouble, and that didn't feel good. And so that they can help their subconscious mind and their energy system not hold on to that pattern for the years and years and years to come. So feel free to use it for children and to teach children to use it as well. Now moving on to pets. I know this is a huge concept for some people, but understanding that we're all connected and that we're all one, and that same energy system lies within all of us, because we're really just a part of a smaller part of a greater energy system, right? So if I'm tapping on myself, or I'm actually helping balance every other energy system that's in the room with me, because we're all the same energy system. So that being said, if let's say my favorite example is working with a dog that had a fear of thunder and lightning or thunderstorms. Every time a thunderstorm happened, the dog would get very anxious and very upset and wouldn't be able to settle down and would wander around the house and was very nervous and would start shaking. And you could tap on yourself. There's a couple of options here. You can either tap on yourself as if you are the animal. So you would say, even though I, Jack the dog, am feeling really anxious right now about this thunderstorm, I'm going to give my physical body permission to relax and trust and know it's just a thunderstorm and everything's okay. This anxious and nervous feeling about the thunderstorm, this anxious and nervous feeling about the thunderstorm. Because if you are made of energy, and so is Jack the dog, then Jack the dog is just another aspect of you. So if you can calm your energy system down as you stay focused on Jack the dog, for example, then you'll find that Jack the dog actually becomes calmer. Okay? It's really about using intuition. It's really about staying grounded and connected to your energy system and doing your best to access what their energy system is feeling in that present moment. You can also imagine tapping on the dog if you're not willing to approach the dog, the cat, the horse, you name it. It works on all animals. You can actually just imagine tapping on the dog. The acupuncture points are quite similar. You can tap on the dog, and that's why our natural instinct when a dog is upset is to soothe them, is to pet them, is to help them calm down by making physical contact with them. What I personally find works best is tapping on myself, as imagining as if I was the dog and connecting my energy system with the animal's energy system. So keep an open mind, and like we said, try it on anything and try it on everything and see what happens. And now for understanding how to incorporate affirmations with the EFT process. I have a lot of clients and a lot of other people that have asked me understanding the law of attraction and the concept of whatever we focus on or give our attention to is what we attract into our life. A lot of people have asked, well, Carol, I don't like the idea of actually focusing on the problem or focusing on the negative feeling or the negative emotion. Shouldn't I be saying the positive? Shouldn't I be saying the affirmation instead? And how I normally respond to that question is by explaining to them or asking them, what is it that's present in your life? What is the current problem that keeps persisting in your life? And they say, well, I have this weight problem, or I have this money problem. And what happens when we try to incorporate an affirmation with that, for example, if you're working on a weight problem or a weight issue and you use the affirmation of, I'm getting thinner and thinner every day, or I now weigh 140 pounds or 150 pounds, if that's your goal weight, and I feel great weighing 140 pounds, and that is the weight that I consistently weigh. But there's part of you that doesn't believe that. There's part of you that feels like, that's not really true. And every time you say your affirmation, it's like a tennis match in your head that I now weigh 150 pounds. No, you don't. Yes, I do. No, you don't. Yes, I do. No, you don't. And whatever you hear in your head, whatever you feel in your heart after you say your affirmation is really truly the vibration that you're resonating at. So when we think about the law of attraction and what we're attracting into our lives, where that's the truest level of vibration that we're at, then that is what we're attracting. So let's use that example again. If you say, I now weigh 150 pounds, if that's your goal weight, or I now weigh 140 pounds, and your brain goes, no, you don't. You weigh twice that, and you've always been that, and that's what you're always going to be, then that's the vibration that you're resonating at. And if that's the vibration you're resonating at, then that's what you keep attracting into your life. So we take EFT and we tap on what you hear in your mind and what you feel in your heart after you say your affirmation. I'll give you another example, because some people learn by example. If you're struggling with money issues and you're trying to use an affirmation to overcome that, and you say, I now earn $100,000 a year, or whatever it is that your goal is, and part of you goes, no, you don't. You only earn $20,000 a year or $30,000 a year, and your family is poor, and that's probably what you're always going to be. You're going to be poor like them. If that's the thought that you have, or that's the feeling that you have after you say your affirmation, I now have $100,000 a year, I now earn $100,000 a year, and your brain goes, yeah, right, no, you don't. If that's the automatic, instant response to the affirmation, that's what you're resonating at, that's what you're vibrating at, that's what you're attracting and creating in your life. And that's probably what you see, right? I ask my clients, what's in your current reality? Good. Your current reality is a reflection of your past thoughts and actions. Your current reality of what you're experiencing is just a result of your past thoughts and actions up to that present moment. So if we can shift and change our vibration in this present moment, then the future as it unfolds from moment to moment will begin to shift and change, and that could be infinite into what is possible for us. So when I ask my clients to use an affirmation, the reason I ask them to use the affirmation is to become aware of the automatic thought response, feeling in your heart that comes after the affirmation. So what is your goal? My goal is to earn $100,000 a year or more. My goal is to weigh 140 pounds, if that's what your goal is. Whatever it is, my goal is to be free of these negative emotions, but part of you goes, that's probably never going to happen. Then that's what we tap on. So going back to those two examples, which are really common for a lot of people, first to the weight, and I'll show you how you would tap on something like that. So if the affirmation is, I now weigh my goal weight of 140 pounds, and your instant response or feeling is like, oh, that's probably never going to happen. I've worked on this problem for so long. I would have you tap, or have my client tap on, even though I feel like this problem is never going to go away, and there's part of me that doesn't want to lose this weight, I can love and accept myself anyway. This weight problem, this weight problem, this weight problem feels like it's going to be like this way forever. It feels like it's going to be this way forever. It feels like it's going to be this way forever. And then check in. If you scaled it, how true it felt for you, scale it again. Even though there's still part of me that feels like I'm going to have this weight problem forever, I love and accept myself anyway. This weight problem, it feels like it's going to be forever. I still have some of this feeling like I'll have this weight problem forever. I still have some of this feeling like I have this weight problem forever. I still have some of this feeling like I'm going to have this weight problem forever. That would be your remaining round. Check in. If it still feels true, do another remaining round. Until you can say the affirmation and actually believe and feel that it's possible for you. The concept and the idea of affirmations is to say them over and over again until they feel true for you. So how beautiful is it to say the affirmation, feel what the response or the thought is, if there's one there that says, yeah, I don't know if that's really ever possible. Do EFT on that component so that the next time you say the affirmation, it really feels true for you. The other example, like we talked about, I now earn $100,000 a year, and your instant response or feeling is like, oh, no one in your family's ever earned that much. Bingo, that's what you need to tap on. Even though no one in my family has ever earned that much money in a year, I can love and accept myself anyway, fully and completely. No one in my family has ever earned that much. How could it ever be possible for me? No one in my family has ever earned that much. How could it possibly be available to me? Okay, and then scale it again, say it again. I now earn $100,000 a year. Well, maybe it's possible, but no, I still have some of that feeling left. Even though I still have some of this feeling left, like no one in my family's ever earned that much, so how could I do it? I can love and accept myself anyway. This remaining feeling like it's not possible for me because no one in my family ever earned that much. This remaining feeling like it's not possible for me because no one in my family ever earned $100,000 a year. Check in with the thought, I now earn $100,000 a year. I think that's possible. If there's a little bit of a response that says, no, not quite, do another remaining round or another remaining round until that gets to a 0. So I hope that explains a little bit about affirmations. And the other component with EFT, your emotional freedom technique, is how we can begin to incorporate an affirmation or a positive affirmation at the end of an EFT round. So for example, going back to the weight issue, what I might have clients do is if they're responding with like a feeling of it's not possible for me to weigh 140 pounds, I really don't think that's ever going to happen. We would tap on this feeling like it's never going to happen, this feeling like it's never going to happen, and then you can have them alternate. You can have, maybe that is possible for me. No, that's not possible. Maybe it is possible for me to weigh 140 pounds. No, there's part of me that thinks it'll never happen. But maybe it is possible. No, it's probably never going to happen. Maybe it is possible for me. Yeah, no, I don't think it's ever going to happen. But maybe it is possible for me. Maybe it is possible for me. I believe that it is possible for me to weigh that. I believe it is possible for me to lose that weight. I believe it is possible for me. Okay, so we would start by tapping on the negative feeling. As that negative feeling gets closer and closer to 0, then you can begin to incorporate the affirmation. And we've touched on this a little bit already. For the money example that we've been using, even though I don't feel like it's possible to earn $100,000 a year, there's no way, no one in my family's ever done that, no way, no how that's ever going to unfold. I really don't think it's possible. I really don't think it's possible. As that gets closer and closer to zero, you can incorporate, you can begin to alternate, and then you can switch over to just the positive affirmation. So you would say, maybe it's possible for me. No, part of me feels like it's not. No one in my family's ever done it. But maybe I could be the first. Maybe I could be the first. No, remember what Dad said, it's probably not going to happen. But maybe I could be the first. No, I couldn't. Yes, I could. No, I couldn't. Yes, I could. No, I couldn't. Yes, maybe I could. I could be the first. I could be the first person in my family to earn $100,000 a year. Wouldn't that feel great? I could be the first person in my family to earn $100,000 a year. Wouldn't that feel great? I could be the first person in my family to earn $100,000 a year. And wouldn't that feel great? So you can see the gradual progression from focusing first on the negative response that, or the belief system that says it's not going to happen, or the feeling that you get after you say the affirmation. Tap on that until it gets to a zero. Slowly begin to alternate a positive affirmation with it. Yes, I can. No, I can't. Yes, I can. No, I can't. And then do another round or two of just positive affirmation, more particularly at the top of the head and the psychological reversal points, so karate chop and collarbone I like too, to begin to reinstall positive. Some people will just go ahead when using EFT and just use positive statements, and that's okay for simple concepts. But if there's deeper rooted issues of beliefs that say it's never going to happen, then it's really important to go back to that root, to clear that, to pull the weed up from the root, throw it out, and then begin to install the positive affirmations after clearing the vibration that says it's not possible, or the belief system that says it's not possible. So I hope that clears up affirmations for you a little bit more. And in the one-on-one sessions, again, you'll see a bit more examples of how that unfolds in a session, and maybe it'll make a bit more sense for you if it doesn't already. So another really common question that I get from a lot of my clients is how to choose the right words when they're doing EFT. So in the basic protocol, we understand that we use this problem, and then we repeat our reminder phrases. We tap down the points using this problem. And this problem usually gets transferred into just one word of an emotion, like this anger, this sadness, this grief, this frustration, whatever it is. And what you'll see when you begin to watch and observe, or if you already have watched and observed all the one-on-one sessions, what you'll see is that I begin to change the words up a little bit. And that's where people get confused and they want to make it a bit more effective. So in order to make EFT a little bit more effective, or my personal experience working with clients, is instead of just using this problem and using the word or the particular emotion, what I do is I change that word to the phrase or the sentence that really triggers the emotion for my client. So for example, I have a client that I've worked with who told me a story, and as she tells me the story, she says a particular phrase where my dad told me I was fat. So instead of using the hurt feeling that is a result of that and tapping on this hurt feeling, this hurt feeling, this hurt feeling, all the way down to the points, I will have her say this hurt feeling about that comment, this hurt feeling about that comment, Dad said I was fat, Dad said I was fat, Dad said I was fat, Dad said I was fat. Because when she says that phrase, that sentence, that comment, that's what really triggers the disruption in the energy system for her. That's what really triggers the emotion for her. And the more that you can trigger that emotion, as much as it's not pleasant or to experience that, if you can really trigger that disruption in the energy system and then tap on it, that's the best way, in my opinion, to resolve the underlying issue. So sometimes just reflecting back your client's words or finding the sentence that really triggers you, that phrase, that comment that someone said, is what can really help you heal from using EFT. And so instead of using the emotion, use the phrase or the sentence or the image that triggers that emotion. For another example, I've worked with a client who was told by a teacher, you'll never amount to anything. and the resulting emotion was anger. Now you have one of two choices, and both will work. You could tap on this anger, that teacher, this anger, that teacher, or you could tap on, that teacher said I would never amount to anything. I'd never amount to anything. That teacher said I'd never amount to anything. That teacher said I'd never amount to anything. I'd never amount to anything. Because it's that phrase, it's that sentence, I never amount to anything, that really triggers the disruption in the energy system. So when you're going back into the memory, or you're going back into the image, or going back into the story, just notice what it is that triggers the emotion, and then tap on whatever it is, that sentence, that phrase, that image, that memory. And the more specific you can be, of course, the better it works. But there's lots of great examples that you'll see when you're watching the one-on-one sessions. So I hope that helps in choosing the right words. Okay, so sometimes we find that we really get stuck with EFT and our procedure. We've tried everything and it doesn't seem to be working. I'm going to give you a technique called the collarbone breathing exercise that you can use if you're experiencing that you're really stuck. So if your number's not moving and you've tried the gamut point procedure and you've tried all the points and you've tried different aspects, but you still find that something's not working, sometimes there's a pattern or a disruption in the energy system that needs the collarbone breathing exercise to balance that. It's probably only used about 5% of the time, and it's a good sort of when in doubt technique to try and if you're really stuck. So I'll go through the whole procedure with you. It's only about 2 minutes long. It might seem a little complicated at first, but because there's 8 rounds to it, but it's pretty simple when you break it down. So when you're ready, if you can join me, it's probably the best way to learn how to do it. We'll take your first 2 fingers to your regular collarbone point on the right side. So right hand, right side. And we'll make sure the elbow's away from the body, so give yourself some space. And if you were going to practice this with your client, you would ask them to do the same. With your left hand on those first 2 fingers, we're going to tap your gamut point on the back of your right hand. Now we're going to tap out 7 times as we go through 5 different breathing steps. Okay? So when you're ready, you can join me. We'll take a breath just halfway in first, halfway in. As you hold that, tap 7 times. Good, now breathe all the way in. Tap 7 times. Good, breathe halfway out. Tap 7 times. And then breathe all the way out. Tap 7 times. And then return to your natural breath. And tap 7 times. Okay, and then we're going to take those 2 fingers on your right hand to your left collarbone point. Tapping the back of the hand. We'll breathe halfway in. All the way in. Halfway out. All the way out. And your normal or natural breath. Perfect. Take that right hand again, but this time we'll take the knuckles to the right collarbone point. Tapping your gamut point, we'll breathe halfway in. We'll breathe all the way in. Halfway out. All the way out. And then your normal breath. Take those right knuckles to your left collarbone point. Again, when you're ready, halfway in. All the way in. Halfway out. All the way out. And then your normal or natural breath. Perfect. You're halfway there. We're going to switch your first 2 fingers to your left collarbone point, and then tuck in your ring and your pinky finger. Okay. And then you're going to take your right hand to the back of your left gamut point. And the same procedure again. Breathe halfway in. Tap 7 times. Breathe all the way in. Tap 7 times. Breathe halfway out. Tapping 7 times. Breathe all the way out. Tap 7 times. And then your normal or natural breath. Now you'll notice I just continuously tap, and in my head I'm kind of counting to about 7 when I get to that breathing point. We'll take those left fingers to your right collarbone point now. Tapping the back of your hand, breathe halfway in. Breathe all the way in. Breathe halfway out. Breathe all the way out. Return to your normal and natural breath. Good. Back to the left side with your left knuckles this time. Okay. And then you can take your right hand to the gamut point again. And we'll breathe halfway in. All the way in. Halfway out. All the way out. And then your normal or natural breath. Good. Take your left knuckles. This is your final round. Left knuckles to your right collarbone point, tapping the gamut point. Again, we'll breathe halfway in. All the way in. Halfway out. All the way out. And then return to your normal or natural breath. Perfect. And then we release. Take a long deep full breath in and a long deep full breath out. And then at this point you would return and go back to the regular EFT procedure, and what you'll probably find is that your number does begin to shift, change, or move, and you'll be able to continue with unraveling whatever it is that you're working on. So when in doubt, try the collarbone breathing exercise. Normally it only needs to be done once, and it's sort of implemented in between, and then just return to your natural EFT, the regular EFT protocol afterwards. So good luck with that. So I'm going to go through a list now of what you can use EFT for. Now, the list is relatively short actually, because you can apply EFT to everything and anything. So I encourage you to do that. Have some fun with it and see what happens, and keep an open mind, because the possibilities are actually infinite. But I'm going to go through the list of the most common things that people actually apply EFT to and what they use EFT for. So the first thing on the list is addictions. It's really common. A lot of people use EFT for addictive cravings, whether that be addictive cravings to food, alcohol, cigarettes, gambling, you name it, anything under the sun, internet. Most of us are addicted to something a little bit in one way, shape, or form. So what you can do initially is apply EFT to the specific craving for whatever it is that you're addicted to, or whatever your client is addicted to. But know that underneath that is usually a whole other range of emotions. And again, it's really important to get to those underlying emotions, because the cravings, generally speaking, sometimes will keep coming back until you deal with the underlying emotions. So it does take a bit more detective work, and it's a little bit more of an artwork. And you'll see a couple of examples of that in the one-on-one sessions that are also provided in this DVD series. The other thing that a lot of people use EFT for is allergies and sensitivities. So again, you can use EFT for the experience that that person is having, and to whatever it is that their allergic reaction is. So if they're sneezing, if they're coughing, if there's itchy and watery eyes, then apply EFT specifically to the symptoms one by one, working on all the aspects. And then ask them, when did the allergy and the sensitivity start? And work on the emotional issues that were probably surrounding their life at that time. And you'll probably find that there's a connection to that. The body sometimes, if experiences something upsetting or traumatic and is exposed to a certain substance at the same time, there becomes a link, at least in the brain and the energy system, so that every time they're exposed to that, the body's exposed to that, it actually doesn't want to, so it thinks it acts as though it's allergic to it, or you'll get an allergic response to it because it's actually linked to a negative emotion, and the body energy system is trying to avoid that. So go back and with allergies and sensitivities, go back to when they started and see what was going on in your life or in their life, if it's a client, at that same time. The next thing that a lot of people use EFT for is creative blocks, which is actually really interesting. So you can tap on, even though I can't think of what I'm going to write next, even though I have no idea what to paint next, but I feel all this pressure to get the painting done, that sort of thing. So if there's a creative block to developing something new, and that's part of your career, it can be a big stumbling block for a lot of people. So try EFT on that and see what happens and see if it works for you. A lot of people use EFT for chronic physical pain. So if there's chronic pain in the body, It's usually back pain for a lot of people. It's really common, or neck pain and shoulder pain or knee pain. And again, be as specific as you can about the pain. You can also tap on the emotions that are surrounding the pain. So for a lot of clients, you'll find that there's issues of frustration, of limitation, of regret, of anger, and tapping on those emotions can help them be free as well. So you can tap with chronic pain. There's two directions that you can take, and take both directions. Initially tapping maybe on the emotions surrounding the pain and how they feel about it, and also tapping on the pain itself. So, and be specific about the pain, if it's dull, if it's sharp, if it's shooting, if it's the right side, if it's the left side. Be as specific as you can. And as well, in the one-on-one sessions, there's a really good example of someone who's got physical pain in her back, and as we unravel the story, you'll see what's really underlying that. So something else that people use EFT for, and it's really common and it's had amazing successful results, is post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD is usually what it's known as, and that's usually the recurring symptoms that someone experiences after a traumatic event. Now, Gary Craig actually did a lot of work with the war veterans in the States, which was amazing, and they were able to sleep and be alleviated of a lot of their physical symptoms that they were experiencing for many years after the war. It also worked great for people that have experienced car accidents and anything of the like. So if there's something traumatic, we use a movie technique or a tell the story technique, and we approach it when the client is ready. It's a very delicate way of doing it, and we take a more gentle approach, and we let the client lead the session in terms of how quickly or how slowly we move, and just be mindful of that, especially when it's something that's very traumatic for them. So with PTSD, it's also important to get all the aspects that are connected to the issue as well, or the traumatic event. Keeping the client distant or having them watch it as if it's on a movie screen, or having it separate from them, is a really helpful way too, so they don't experience too much emotional distress. If it's, you'll see when I'm working with some clients, if it's a traumatic event from when they were younger, I actually help them separate a little bit by saying little Johnny or little Suzanne, or I refer to their inner child, so that they can actually feel compassion for the child that experienced that, instead of trying to feel it in the moment now, because that's a little more challenging for people. So if it's a traumatic event, go back if you can and have them experience it a little bit outside of themselves on a screen, or in the little child, or the little version of them, the younger version of them. Sometimes it's easier that way to process, and it's beautiful when you see them free on the other side. The other thing that it's really common, a lot of people use EFT for, is emotional, physical, or sexual abuse that's been experienced. So emotional abuse is an interesting way to work with people, because usually it's either been with a partner, if it's been in a relationship, or it's with a parent. And if it's emotional abuse that's been over a number of years, again, we can't take a global approach to it. We've got to break it down to as many specific events as they can remember, the strongest memories that they have of that abuse. And sometimes it helps to write them down. If you or your client isn't comfortable with that, then we don't force the issue. But instead of using, even though I had this anger at my father because he was so mean and awful to me for 10 years, I can love and accept myself, it's too global. EFT will provide some relief, but if you're looking for true relief from EFT, this is part of the artwork of it. It's going back and identifying as many specific little incidences as they can, memories that they can, and pull them out, tease it out one by one, and work through them that way. For emotional abuse, for physical abuse, again, you can use EFT either on the movie technique, or help them distance themselves from it a little bit, or refer to inner child or younger version of them. Sometimes that helps. For sexual abuse, you'll see a really good example in the one-on-one sessions, where I don't even actually have her tell me what she experienced word for word out loud. I let her go through it in her mind, and I give her the space and permission to never actually have to say it out loud. So that's another technique that you can use with your clients, providing them either confidentiality or just that safe space if they're not ready to talk about it. But again, the movie technique works really well for all those types of abuse that have been experienced. The other thing that's really a lot of fun to apply EFT to is issues of money and success. So if there's clients that want to move forward in their life, they want to be more successful, and for some reason that just never seems to manifest for them, you can use EFT for that. So blocks and limitations to earning more money is usually connected to issues of deservingness or worthiness. So it's really important to go back to who taught them that, where did you learn that, why do you believe that, give me any evidence of that from your past. It's also a lot of fun to maybe say, I'd like to make $100,000 a year or $200,000 a year or whatever is just a little bit out of your range, and see how that feels for you. Well, I don't think I could do that. And then tap on that feeling, like, even though I don't think I could earn that much, I can love and accept myself. Have your client or have yourself actually visualize what it would be like to be successful, and then identify the emotions that come up. Right? When you imagine let's say they want to be in a movie and that's their goal, that would be success for them. Okay, well, how do you feel when you imagine yourself being on a screen and you're in a movie and you're famous, if that's what their goal is? And if that makes them feel like, oh, I don't know, when I really think about it, I feel nervous about that, then tap on the emotions that come up when they're thinking about that. And what you'll probably find is that maybe there was someone earlier in their life that told them it wasn't possible, or that they couldn't do that, or they'd never make that much money. And if you go back and tap on those statements and the feelings, emotions surrounding it, then that gives them the ability to flourish and to succeed in ways they probably never thought possible. The next thing that a lot of people use EFT for is relationships. So, and that's a whole other approach, right? So if you're in a partnership or in a relationship, and there's sometimes frustrations, as we all know, maybe issues of communication that come up, you can tap on the emotions that arise when you're with your partner, or if you're working with a client, you can help work through those emotions that they feel when they're with their partner that are not working for them. And what you'll probably find if you dig a little deeper is that they may or may not be recreating the same situation that they had with their opposite sex parent growing up. So when I'm doing relationship work with clients, I often go back to their relationship with their opposite sex parent and ask them a few questions about what was it like, what was the best part, what was the worst part, if anything could be different, what do you wish was different, and then we gotta go from there. And sometimes healing the past relationship with the parent can help them see their partner in a different way. Because remember, what we're attracting in our life is really just a lens through which we're viewing the world. And when we shift and change that lens because of our past experiences, and we heal from those past experiences, we can see those outside of us in a different way. Something else it's really great to use EFT for is sports improvement, or improving your range of motion. So if you have an athlete that you're working with, or you yourself are an athlete, you can use, for example, even though I have this shoulder problem and I really need to be able to open my shoulder up and I have tightness in my anterior deltoid, I can love and accept myself and give my body permission for those muscles to relax. This tightness in my deltoid, I can give my muscles permission to relax. This tightness in my deltoid, give my muscles permission to relax. So improving sports performance in another direction, if it's not muscular or range of motion joint related, it can be a fear or anxiety of throwing from the three-point line. Even though I feel really anxious every time I have to throw the basketball from the three-point line, I can love and accept myself and choose to feel confident instead. That's a really good example as well for sports performance. A lot of people also use EFT for other special needs. So things like dyslexia, it works really well for, learning disabilities, either for adults or for children, and behavior management. So this is a really good idea for parents. If you're a parent, you can do surrogate tapping for your child if they're experiencing something. Even though my son Charlie is really upset and he can't control himself, he can love and accept himself, this upset feeling that Charlie's having. So you can do surrogate tapping, which we've talked about already. You can teach your child to tap, or you can tap for them if you have that relationship and they'll let you in your space to do that. For dyslexia, we have them describe, or you can describe specifically what's going on. Even though it feels like those words are moving and those letters look like they're backwards, I can love and accept myself anyway. And you'll find amazing and fascinating and wonderful results. So feel free to approach even something like that with EFT. Something else that a lot of people, it's really common for EFT, is weight loss. So a lot of times there's psychological reversal present in weight loss, as there is present in addictions. Sometimes weight loss is really just connected to an addiction as well. So it's a food addiction, right? An insatiable need to eat certain foods. And psychological reversal is probably present about 90% of the time in addictions. So if the weight loss issue is connected to food, what we do is approach the food cravings first, and then we look for underlying aspects of loneliness or of deprivation. So that's usually an underlying factor. Sometimes it's loneliness as a child, or feeling deprived of love, attention, or affection, or stability, or you name it. And at some point in their life, when they felt that emotion, they chose to eat something sweet, for example. And now every time they go back and feel that emotion, they're triggered and want to eat something sweet. So it just becomes a cycle. And we have to remember, it's not who we are, it's just a pattern within our energy system, and it's totally possible to heal from that. So if it's weight loss issues and there's psychological reversal, we always ask what would be the benefit of holding on to the weight, and what would be the downside of letting it go. Because sometimes there's other fears, and sometimes it's something simple as, well, if I lost all this weight, I'd have to go buy a new wardrobe, and I really don't think I could afford that. Okay, well, then we tap on that issue, even though I'm worried that I won't be able to afford a new wardrobe. And once we clear that, you might find that the weight begins to drop. But it's really about doing some deeper layers of work on issues of loneliness, deprivation, and what would really happen if I lost the weight. Is there any pros or cons to that? Finally, what I really enjoy applying EFT or using EFT for is limiting beliefs. And if you're not quite sure, again, what your limiting beliefs are or what your beliefs are, then you can just take a look around you and where you're living and where you're working and what you're doing and what your relationship looks like and what your bank account looks like. And that's really the extent of what you believe is possible for you, at least at a subconscious level. Because if you're consciously, you say, well, no, I believe I could do better than this. And that's probably true. But if we can apply EFT to the deeper layers and say, well, obviously I don't believe I could do better than this, or obviously I don't believe that I could do more or worthy of a better relationship, then we just go back and tap on those. Even though I don't believe that's possible for me, I can love and accept myself. And you can use that for any different area of your life, whether it's money, whether it's relationships, whether it's where you're living or your career. So again, you'll see a couple of instances in that in the one-on-one sessions. So I hope that helps you with the list of what you can apply EFT to and what you can use EFT for. And I hope you enjoy the journey in the process.